Welcome to School Britannia, the podcast where two Aussies teach Brits their own history. This is my friend Ellie.
And this is my friend Claire.
Ellie, have you noticed that I call you Ellie in the intro and I call you Ellie in everyday life, but throughout the episodes I always call you Eleanor?
That's because we're talking about history and it's a very serious subject.
Yes, very formal.
So you should use my serious name.
I should, yes.
Do you have a longer version of Claire? Claramy?
Clarithy? I tend to lengthen people's names with a "thee" because
Clemeron?
my brother is Timothy.
Oh yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's just Claire. I got the opposite with, I got a fake shortening to Claz, which I thought was the...
Claz.
Claire was just naturally shortened to until I grew up and found out no one else called Claire was called Claz.
That feels like a pretty classic Australian short name.
Yeah, well, because we had a Loz in our family. My older sister is
Loz and
Loz.
Claz.
Yeah, so
Claz
it was
Loz.
natural.
But Tim didn't get Toz.
No, he didn't.
Yes.
It'd be hilarious. We get Tim, so yeah, it's like Timothy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not nice when you don't have a long name you can screech at someone when they're in trouble. Yeah.
Single syllable names.
But talking of your name, Eleanor,
Yes.
I haven't said it in a while because I haven't seen you in a while.
I know, it's been
You've
too
been in
long.
Australia.
Yes.
Visiting my family. It's been lovely, but I have missed you.
Oh.
I have missed talking history with you.
Yes, I know, it was too long a stretch.
It was. Never again until later this year.
And it's lovely to record some fresh episodes with you.
Yes, we've had lots of fun sharing the other ones while I was away.
Yes.
We pre-recorded. It'd be nice to do this in real time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I also realised I had kept saying, you can find us on YouTube, and it turns I had lied. I had not put anything on YouTube because I was lazy, but I have now put us on all the episodes on YouTube.
Oh,
if you would like to listen to our voices with a static image of our logo in front of you at the same time.
We could have put a static image of your cat gremlin instead. Maybe we'll mix it up.
Angel.
In the middle, a picture of gremlin
Just flash up. Yeah, you have to diligently watch the whole thing to see the little gremlin Easter egg.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no, I want to do that.
Do it.
Excellent. So, Ellie, what history tidbit do you have for us today?
Well, Claire, did you know that women haven't always been able to study and practice medicine in the UK?
No way.
Truly.
Truly.
It's quite recently that they were allowed to study medicine.
People regulated women's behaviour in society throughout history?
I know.
Madness.
It's mad, but it's true.
Ooh.
And we're here to talk about it. So, guess what? The University of Edinburgh was the first British university to admit women as medical students.
That's awesome.
I know. Well, to admit women at all, and they just happened to be, they happened to be medical students.
Cool.
Do you want to guess the date?
Ooh. I know they were really big into the anatomy scene as well. I want to say the 1870s.
Ooh, very close.
How close?
1869.
Oh, damn!
Yeah, well done. You should do a British history podcast.
I should, yeah.
So, in 1540, way back, Henry VIII granted the charter for the Company of Barber Surgeons, which is a terrifying profession
I know,
name.
I love it.
Barber
Hacking off
surgeons.
limbs, ripping out teeth. So
hair.
good.
Yeah, cutting hair.
Yeah, I think I'd be good at that job.
So basically that made being a barber / surgeon a profession, and they regulated it.
Before that, just any old person could
Pretty
do it,
much.
right?
And once it was regulated, they immediately specifically barred women from professional practice.
Right.
It's like the first thing they did.
Do we know how many women were barber surgeons before it was regulated?
No, that is a really good question. That'd
Yeah,
be
I wonder how
fascinating
common
to
that
find
was.
out. Yeah, I don't know. I think you sort of think of women as being like herbalists a bit, don't you? Rather than
midwives and
but,
things that could be confused with being a witch.
Yes, exactly. But no, all I know is that they were specifically barred from being doctors from about 1540 onwards.
Cool.
And then in 1869, the University of Edinburgh decided that they were going to admit 7 women to their medical degree
Great.
course.
7 specific women, or they had 7 slots for 7 random women to apply to?
Quite a funny story because there's this amazing woman called Sophia Jex Blake who basically went to the University of Edinburgh and was like, hey, I want to study medicine. I'm really fucking smart. Please, can I study medicine?
Yes,
Here
Sophia.
is the evidence that I'm really smart and I want to study medicine. And they were like, And the medical school was like, yeah, sure, you can come study medicine. But then the university board was like, look, and actually I think I have the quote here. It's pretty funny. So she applied to study medicine in 1869, and even though the medical faculty approved her application, the university court rejected her, saying they could not make the necessary arrangements in the interests of only one lady.
Ugh.
So Jex Blake went out and got more ladies. She's like...
on a recruitment drive.
Pretty
That's
much.
awesome.
So she put an ad in the Scotsman for more women to come and join her to study medicine.
Yes.
And she got all these responses. And 6 women basically said they were really keen to study. So their application was approved because the university was like, oh, there's 7 of you now.
It's worth the effort.
So it's worth the effort.
Put ankle guards in? I don't know.
Who knows?
What necessary?
Well, the necessary arrangement was that they had to have separate classes. Pretty much. So they weren't allowed to be in the same classes as the men.
Right.
Yeah. So these women were called the Edinburgh 7. And that's their, like, name.
I want to join that gang.
I know, doesn't it sound
I know
fucking
I would ruin
cool?
the name by joining it, but I want to
And
be in it.
the 7 people were Sophia Jex Blake, the leader of the gang, Isabel Thorne, Edith Petchy, I love that name, Matilda Chaplin, Helen Evans, Mary Anderson, and Emily Bovell.
Emily Bovell.
Emily Bovell. That's incredible. So on the 2nd of November 1869, they signed the matriculation roll, and the University of Edinburgh became the first British university to open its doors to women.
That's great.
Pretty great so
Good on
far,
them.
right? But, of course, they weren't the first women to study or practice medicine in history. Of course. So, in the 4th century BCE, go on way back now,
Yes.
there's this woman, they think, possibly a legend, but her name was Agnogdesi. I hope I'm saying that right. Agnogdesi. And she was a physician in Athens, but she had to work disguised as a man because women were forbidden from practicing medicine. That's a theme throughout this whole story.
Yeah.
But she was super popular because all her female patients really liked her because she was like, I know what a fanny is.
Yeah, knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
Knew how to talk to women in some strange innate way.
And all the male surgeons and doctors got really jealous because she was taking all the female clients. So they took her to court and her gender got revealed. Well, she was like forced to reveal her gender.
That's bad.
But the women of Athens all came together and because they loved her so much, and she was acquitted.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's kind of a story, but I like that to just start it off. Then, and this person was real, Dorothea Bucca, probably, lived from 1360 to 1436 in Bologna, and she held the chair of medicine and philosophy at the University of Bologna for 40 years.
Dorothea, good on you.
It's amazing. And there were actually heaps of examples of women practicing medicine in Italy. Like, they were really cool with it from, like, the 11th century up till today. Italy's been like, yeah, ladies, come do medicine, please.
Awesome.
Yeah, which
I didn't know that.
is really cool. So, turns out the UK is just particularly crap when it
Backwards.
comes to women practicing medicine. Then, over in Korea, we have Jang Guom, who was the first female royal physician in Korean history.
Cool.
She was born in the 15th century and she took care of King Jungjong's family, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, damn.
And she got given like this special title because she was so amazing. She got called the Great, basically.
Oh, fuck
which is,
yeah.
incredible. Another Dorothea Erxleben. Good.
Yes.
Doing well with the pronunciation tonight.
It's difficult,
Should have
man.
practiced this more.
My sister, when I went home, lectured me and she was like, you know you can look up the pronunciations of things on the internet.
I know.
It's I
We suck.
try. I'm sorry.
No one has specifically picked me up on anything yet, so until that happens.
Please do not do that to us.
Don't do it.
Yes, fragile, sensitive little being.
Dorothea Erxleben was the first female medical doctor in Germany. So she was instructed in medicine by her father from an early age and received her MD from the University of Halle in 1754.
Oh,
which is
good on
pretty
her.
fucking early.
Yeah.
Then you've got Marie de Rocher, who was a Brazilian obstetrician, midwife, and physician. And she was awarded her medical degree from the Medical School of Rio de Janeiro in 1834.
Cool.
Which brings us up to about where we're at in Edinburgh,
Yes,
1869. But there was another English woman who pipped the Edinburgh 7 at the post. But it's a crazy story. So she studied medicine before them, but she had to be super wily about it and really sneaky to make it happen. So Elizabeth Garrett Anderson was the first woman to qualify in Britain as a physician and a surgeon. She did this in 1862, so the Edinburgh 7's in 1869, 5 years before the Edinburgh 7 got into Edinburgh Uni. She had to work the system. So she studied medicine privately. So she employed a private tutor to teach her medicine.
How rich was she?
No, not at all. That's the crazy thing. I'll tell you more about it in a bit, but she was like, not at all. I don't know how she got the money. She was not rich. She worked as a nurse at Middlesex Hospital, and she just talked her way in to interesting places. So she talked her way into surgeries, and she started helping out with surgeries, and she just like
you just be annoying enough, and people will let you do stuff just to shut you up.
Exactly. And she talked her way into the hospital's medical school. They wouldn't let her study everything, but they let her study Latin, which was really important at the time, and a few other bits and pieces that were really useful. And then this is the best bit. So she's doing all this study on her own, basically, just self-directing. And then she was awarded her credentials because she found a loophole in the admissions policy of the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries, who had to admit her because there was a clause in their charter that basically said you couldn't discriminate based on sex. So they let her in because they had to let her in. And then they immediately changed their regulations so that no more women could follow her.
Jesus.
So they just like slammed that. They just hadn't realised that there was that loophole until Elizabeth came along. And they're like, oh, crap, we have to let this chick in.
But no more.
No more.
Good on you, Elizabeth.
I know, it's incredible. So
women are so good at that, like knowing the system.
It was just incredible. And like, against all odds. So she managed to become a doctor, but no hospitals would hire her. No private medical practices would hire her because she didn't have a penis. And we know how important that is to being a doctor. Like,
so important.
It's like so hard to like take someone's temperature if you don't have a dick.
Yes.
I've heard.
Yes. Because the penis is actually the thermometer of the human body.
Gross. Oh, that went too far. Sorry, everyone. So she was like, oh, fuck it, I'll start my own practice.
Yes.
And it had to be in like a really shit part of town, but she did it. And she wasn't super popular at first because she was a woman. But luckily, there was an outbreak of cholera in 1866.
Yay!
And people were forced to come to her because they were desperate. And then they were like, oh, wow, this woman actually really knows what she's doing.
Desperate times calls for
women
desperate
doctors.
Female measures.
Exactly. So everyone was like, oh, she's a really good doctor. And so her business took off and she became a really good doctor.
Wow.
So then this is the side note in answer to your question about her being rich. So a few of the women I've mentioned so far have been pretty privileged. So they had fathers who were doctors or they grew up rich. But not Elizabeth Garrett Anderson. She was born in Whitechapel, which is like where Jack the Ripper is from.
It's a brown card on the Monopoly board, so we know it ain't wealthy.
It's crap. I'm sure it's lovely now. I don't know. I've never been to Whitechapel.
London is definitely expensive.
It's really posh now. And she was the second of 11 children, and her mum and dad were pawnbrokers.
Wow.
So she was a suffragette, and she was, and she was the first ever female mayor in Britain.
Good.
So
her.
she's not a posh lady. She worked her fucking ass off, basically, to become the first doctor and the first mayor in the UK. Isn't that mad?
Yes.
I want to know more about her. She's really incredible. So anyway, thanks, Elizabeth. Back to the Edinburgh 7. So when we left the Edinburgh 7 before we took our trip through history, they had just been accepted into Edinburgh Uni. Yay! How great is that?
Congratulations, lady.
So good. So they got a nice little house at 15 Buccleuch Street.
Aww.
And they started class.
We should go visit and do a little
pilgrimage.
Yes.
I think there is a little, well, hopefully there's a little plaque
better
at the
be
front.
A plaque.
Yeah.
We'll just stick a bit of sticky note there and just be like, a thing happened here, y'all.
Y'all. So, as I said, their classes were taught separately to the men. And because of that, they had to pay more for their medical degrees because they were smaller classes.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Yeah, and there was like less people to absorb the cost. But yay, they were studying medicine. That's good. But then, there's always a catch. In March 1870, the Edinburgh Seven sat their first exams in physiology and chemistry. 4 of them obtained honours, because they're fucking smart, and one of them, Edith Petchy, came first in the whole year. In her whole year in medicine, she beat all of the men, and she was top of her class. Now, traditionally, that person, the top of the class in your first year, would be awarded a thing called the Hope Scholarship. But professors, particularly this guy called Sir Robert Christison, thought, I know, he's a bad egg. Watch out for him. They thought it would provoke the male students if a woman was awarded the scholarship.
Maybe provoke them into studying harder?
Maybe.
Jesus.
So they decided to give it to a male student who had got a low grade because they didn't want to provoke them.
I hate everything now.
I know. It sucks. So yeah, this dude, Professor Christensen, was an all-round poo face. he argued. He argued against the women attending mixed classes because that kept coming up. The women were like, "Oh, can we just please just come to the normal classes because this is really annoying." And he suggested that any woman pursuing a medical career must be basely inclined or a Magdalene. I don't know.
We have bodies too, dick face.
Weird.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a screaming misogynist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he ran a smear campaign against the women, and he...
Oh my God!
Yeah, and he, turned faculty members and students against them. So when they started, it was kind of okay. They were just kind of flying under the radar a bit. Yeah. But then this guy was, stirring up trouble, and men started to catcall them, to slam doors in their faces, to creepily follow them home, send them hate mail, fuck up their front door. They did graffiti stuff on their front door. They blew smoke in their faces, just all this crap.
So just all the general things women
pretty
encounter
much
in everyday
all the
lives,
normal things that men do to women. Still, it's horrible. And I can just picture it because I know what that is. It's because it still happens.
You've been in those situations.
Yeah, exactly. So they had to go to and from their classes in a group. They just started traveling. They were all living in this house in Buccleuch Street, and they just, as a pack, just went to class all at the same time to protect each other. It's horrible. And then there was this thing called the Surgeons' Hall riot. So this is escalating and escalating and escalating. And one morning, they arrived at Surgeons' Hall, which I was actually at the other day for a lecture on tuberculosis.
Surgeons' Hall.
Isn't it pretty?
I have complicated feelings about it, but it's so interesting.
It's gorgeous. I love it. But yeah, in 1870, as the Edinburgh Seven were approaching Surgeons' Hall, they were on Nicholson Street, and they were met by a howling mob of 700 misogynists.
Jesus!
Yeah, pelting them with rubbish and mud, just throwing shit at them. And they tried to get into the gates at Surgeons' Hall, but they were slammed in their faces from the inside, so no one inside would let them in. So they were trapped outside with this 700-strong crowd of crazy people, and they were stuck at the gate, and they were just hemmed in by terrifying, horrible men. And then a sympathetic student from inside rushed out and unlocked the gate and let them in.
Thank God.
Thank goodness for whoever that was.
Doing the bare minimum.
A few good men. one nice guy. So it was horrible, but this incident turned opinion in their favour. So the press, the press was really on their side, which is interesting.
Yeah, because they could easily have been...
horrible, exactly. Yes. But yeah,
considering it sounds like the university wasn't on their side.
I know, yeah. So yeah, the press started writing really positive articles about them and really slamming this Christensen guy and saying he was awful.
Good.
And male students started to be like, oh, we have to really step up. So they started acting as voluntary bodyguards. They just walked with the women.
Protecting the women against you, dickheads.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, yeah, but
good.
I'm glad some people stepped up.
Yeah, protecting them against their dickhead fellow class people.
Good.
So yeah, they just made sure they got safely from home to class and back again. So they kept learning, but in 1873, the University of Edinburgh, in its wisdom, decided that it didn't really want to grant them degrees. So they were like,
you've been taking their money for 3 years.
Yeah. So you've done all this learning, we've taken your money, but nah.
You get nothing for it.
We just, nah. So they were like, ugh, fuck it.
Protestant fire.
And they went off to the continent to study medicine in civilized places. So they went to Bern or Paris, and they were actually acknowledged for what they learnt, and they were granted degrees by those universities. In the end, it was the Irish College of Physicians who was the first university in the British Isles to grant women degrees. So somewhere in the Republic of Ireland now was the first place, because Britain was so far behind.
Yeah.
So in 1878, Jax Blake, the leader of the Edinburgh Seven, returned to Edinburgh and became the city's first woman doctor. She had her own practice in the new town, and she also established a clinic for poor patients who couldn't afford medical treatment usually, which became Bruntsfield Hospital near you.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, really cool. And she also set up the Edinburgh School of Medicine for Women to fix the problem that she had encountered in the past and make sure that women could study medicine.
Good on her.
Which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So, now here's a really cool little twist. Jamie's amazing sister, who is also called Claire.
Yes.
It's a good name.
A great name.
She will be graduating as a doctor from Edinburgh Uni this July.
Oh, cool.
Which is very exciting. And as if that couldn't get any better, they are awarding the Edinburgh Seven posthumous degrees at her graduation.
That's so exciting!
Yeah. So students are volunteering to go and pick up the degrees for these amazing women who were so brave.
Her feelings.
I know, me too. It's
That's
incredible.
So lovely.
Yeah.
That's a really good acknowledgement of the failure to support them in the past.
Exactly. So trying to sort of make a bit of a reparation.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So I tried to find out what the gender balance is like these days at the medical school at Edinburgh Uni.
Largely women, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I couldn't find exact figures, but I know that there are about a third more women in undergraduate courses than men at Edinburgh Uni, and almost twice as many in postgraduate courses. And I spoke to Claire, and she said she thinks her year is about 60-40 women-men. So
women are overtaking men at most universities in medical degrees these days.
Yeah. And then I wondered whether that sort of pulled through to actual practicing doctors in the UK. And it kind of doesn't. So the proportion of NH doctors who are women has grown every year since 2009, but only 45% of practicing doctors are women right now.
So I wonder if that's skewed by the fact that so many NHS doctors are not British.
Well, it doesn't matter if they're
But I just mean, like, because it's not about who was here studying.
Oh, I see.
And it's more about who has access to immigration and things like that, because so many NHS doctors are from the EU or Commonwealth countries.
But one of the interesting things, and this is like reflected across every industry, but women make up like 3/4 of NHS staff. So the NHS is run by women. Well, it's supported by women, but it's run by men.
It's run on the backs of women.
Yes, because they are still the minority of senior roles. So they hold just 37% of senior management roles. And surgery is still really dominated by men. Only 20% of surgeons are women.
Yes.
So
that it's a bit of a boys' club.
Yeah. So there's still a long way to go and still a lot to fix there, because those workers who are the 3/4 of the NHS are not paid well.
Yeah.
And those surgeons probably are paid well. So there's still a lot of bias going on in medicine. So that is the Edinburgh Seven.
That was fascinating. And in terms like uplifting and enraging.
I know. And I just want to dedicate that to Claire, who I just think is amazing to have done all that incredible study and to be becoming a doctor and continuing this incredible legacy of women studying medicine and being absolute bosses. And I thought it was really interesting. So the Edinburgh Seven, they were the first undergraduates in Britain.
Yes.
And they're medical students, which I think is interesting that is the first thing that women go for. Yeah. That we're like, okay, we're starting to get a bit of power. We're starting to be able to maybe go to uni. What's the first thing?
Just fucking go all out.
Well, what's the most important thing, right?
Where we have the biggest impact.
Control over our own bodies.
Yes.
Just at a base level, having that knowledge and that power of how human bodies work seems to be the first thing, really. I would say that's really probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought that was fascinating.
Yes.
What will you be teaching us about today, Claire?
Well, I have a cracking story for you, Eleanor.
So exciting.
This comes to us courtesy of my housemate Kat, who told me about it. And I just stared at her fucking gobsmacked the entire time she was telling me. I was just like, how is any of this? How? Why? How? So I'm going to tell you about that one time that America invaded Britain.
What?
Right?
Whoa!
Yes!
That one time?
Yeah!
Never heard of it.
Exactly! So there's a dude called John Paul Jones,
Mm-hmm.
and he attacked the city of Whitehaven.
Whoa!
Right?
Is that where Dracula came in? Ignore me. I'm wrong. You know that scene in Dracula where he lands in the UK?
No, I think that's on the wrong side.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so Whitehaven's on the west.
I see, right.
So we need to start with a little bit of a story about John Paul Jones.
Okay.
He was born as just John Paul on July 16th, 1747, near Kirkbean on the southwest coast of Scotland, which...
Kirkbean.
I do not know how you pronounce that, but I don't want to know because I want it to be called Kirkbean. Sorry, Lauren, I'm not looking up the pronunciation of that one. So he started his maritime career at the age of 13, sailing out of Whitehaven, which is in the northern English county of Cumberland.
Mm-hmm.
And he was apprenticed aboard the ship called Friendship.
Aww.
Just like so cute. Imagine that being like your first sailing adventure on the Friendship ship. He had an older brother called William Paul who had married and settled in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
John Paul and William Paul.
I know.
Right.
Interesting name. And he sailed to Virginia a lot when he was younger. Oh, John Paul.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it was because his brother was there or if that was just coincidence.
Just visiting his brother.
Yeah. So he sailed on a bunch of different ships and eventually became first mate. Then, for some reason, he ditched his ship in Jamaica and made his own way back to Scotland.
Huh.
And then eventually
Was
got
it
like another
haunted?
gig on a boat. I don't
Ship
know.
of
Like he just
souls.
left the crew and he wasn't in charge, but he just ditched it and was
Okay.
like on my own.
Maybe he had a fight with someone.
Probably the more you find out about him, the more you'll be like, that's probably what happened. So then 1768, and he's on a ship called John, no relation. And he suddenly gets this huge career break thanks to yellow fever killing the captain and the first mate.
Cholera and yellow fever, creating opportunities for aspiring young sailors / doctors.
I know, it's great. So he took charge and sailed the ship back to port, and as a reward, the owners made him master of the ship and its crew and gave him 10% of the cargo.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I guess apparently the past when that happened, things just fell apart and people went rogue. I don't know. Apparently they were really, really thankful.
Yeah, cool.
So he led 2 voyages to the West Indies before running into problems. So on the second voyage, he had a crew member flogged and was accused of being, quote, unnecessarily cruel. At first everyone was a bit like, oh, you're a bit of a dick, but whatever. But then the victim died a few weeks later.
Oh.
Which might have actually been from yellow fever, again. But
Probably not helped by the flogging.
exactly, and it made him look really bad. And it was all this huge deal because the guy who died wasn't just any old crew member. He was an adventurer from this really rich and influential Scottish family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so he was arrested for his involvement in this man's death and imprisoned back in his home county in Scotland.
Oops.
And he was later released on bail. He didn't seem to serve any time or get convicted of anything, but the whole thing ruined his reputation. So he left Scotland in command of a vessel called Betsy that had guns. I don't know, there was a bunch of stuff about Betsy had things and turrets and something about portholes, and I didn't understand it, but she had guns.
She had guns?
Yeah, big
and
fat
turrets.
ship. I don't know. There was a lot of things like the word sloop. I didn't know it.
I don't know.
I've been on a real naval bender with research
Yeah,
stuff lately,
yeah.
and I still don't know anything about ships.
Is a sloop like a smaller...
Probably.
Anyway, who knows?
We could speculate on this for hours.
We don't, neither of us knows.
And never will. And he sailed Betsy around Tobago for 18 months, or out of a port in Tobago for 18 months.
Sounds nice. Romantic.
Yeah, well, this sweet tropical working holiday came to an end when he killed a crew member.
Wow.
Called Blackton with a sword in an argument over wages.
Okay.
He
This
sounds
guy's
like
got some
a bit of a
anger
dick.
issues.
Yeah, he just... he sounds a bit useless. He claimed years later in a letter to none other than Benjamin Franklin
Oh, wow.
that it was self-defense. But he didn't want to go through a trial in an admiral's court because the last time he'd done that, the family of his first victim were really influential, so I think he was worried things would look bad on him again.
Yeah.
So instead, he runs away to Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is where his brother had settled. Said brother had recently died and had no heirs, so John Paul Jones left his own fortune to go and take up the estate of his dead brother.
Wow.
And this was about the time he adds Jones to his surname to evade the law.
Oh, wow. So he just made it up.
Yeah, he was John Paul and he was like, I'm John Paul
Jones.
Jones.
So his whole name is John Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a weird one.
It's not like Jean-Paul.
No,
it's John,
just John
Paul.
Mr. Paul.
Right, so his brother was just William Paul. Makes sense. Okay,
Mr. Paul the Elder.
Fab.
So he just adds Jones to the end. Like, doesn't become John Jones. He's just John Paul Jones.
Interesting.
Yeah. So apparently that meant the law couldn't find him now.
People were easily tricked back then.
Apparently so. And from that time on, America became, quote, the country of his fond election, as he later described it.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Nice.
So at the time, America was staging a revolution against British rule. That was during the American Revolution.
Cool.
So JPJ joins the fight.
JPJ with Alexander Hamilton.
Yes. I feel sad that I can't make any actual Hamilton references in this story.
That's all
He's
I
not
know.
cool enough.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah, well, JPJ just didn't do anything cool enough to be worthy of being
Hamiltonized.
Yeah. So not a lot is known about this period of his life. It's not known if he joined the revolution because of like an unwavering commitment to his belief in no taxation without representation. Or if just being a farmer on a plantation did not turn out to be as fun as he thought it would be.
Or maybe his lust for blood.
Yeah, could have been that. He sounds a bit murderous.
Yeah.
But he did join. So he leaves for Philadelphia shortly after settling in North America to volunteer in the newly founded Continental Navy. So this is in 1775. And his Wikipedia page is definitely written by some American Revolutionary War buff because they just kept throwing around names and dates like nobody's business. And I was like, I do not know who these people are and I am not reading their Wikipedia pages to find out. Way too many. So apparently he only got into the Navy because he got a recommendation from some guy I'd never heard of that apparently was important in the Navy or in the revolution at the time.
Right.
Like no one seemed very interested in him, but they were really desperate for officers and stuff. So some guy vouched for him and that's how he got into the Navy.
Sweet.
Yes. So he's in the Navy.
Yay.
He's like, this is where it gets interesting. Yeah, well, I'm glad.
But I, in the back of my head, I've got the whole invading England thing.
Well, this is where it's America invading England because he is now an American naval officer.
Even though
otherwise it would just be a disgruntled Scotsman invading England.
He's Scottish. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah. Well, he sails out of Whitehaven and people often talk about him being from the north of England, but he's not. He's technically Scottish.
He just sailed out of the north of England.
Yeah.
Alright.
So, fun fact. He sailed from the Delaware River in February 1766 aboard Alfred. On the Continental Navy's...
just have person names.
Stupid names.
Alfred.
So this was the Continental Navy's maiden cruise, and it was on board this vessel that Jones took the honour of hoisting the first US ensign, the Grand Union flag, over a naval vessel.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so he got that honour. And at first I was like, it should have been an American though. And I was like, wait, none of them were American. They were all just Brits.
Exactly.
So he had lots of success in the Navy, got lots of promotions and stuff, but he had a bit of a thing with authority. So he was in some feud with the commander-in-chief of the Navy about something.
Right.
And so they put him on shore and they were just like, stop it, stop being annoying, stop being the worst. But then he was eventually given command of a much smaller ship to put him in his place. It was the newly constructed USS Ranger. Much cooler name.
Yeah.
Betsy.
Or Alfred.
Yeah. So he sailed the Ranger to France to help with the American commission that was there with naval strategies. And that's when he became pals with Ben Franklin.
Wow.
So he was promised a bigger ship, but then the British apparently stole it from the Dutch shipyard where it was being built.
Bastards.
Or blocked the sail or something. So he was really pissy again.
Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like this whole story then just becomes his personal vendetta against the British for stealing his big ship. He never says it, but I feel like that's what was going on. But on April 10th, 1778, John Paul Jones set sail from Brest, France, for the western coast of Britain. And he has a bit of success here, attacking British merchant ships in the Irish Sea.
Wow. So he was just hang on. Was he meant to be doing this, or was he just
I
going
could
rogue?
not find out why he was
there.
Sailed out of France, but it seemed to be he was there. He was supposed to be there. He was supposed to be there as an American naval officer.
Just shit stirring.
Yeah. basically.
Wow.
I don't know. So, but I couldn't find out under what orders and whose orders, but it seemed like he was supposed to do that. Yeah, there was, I don't know, it's very confusing. Like, it seems like, I can't tell who's telling him who to do what at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, on April 17th, so like a week later, he persuades his crew to join him in this attack on Whitehaven, the town where his maritime career had begun.
Whoa, this feels so personal.
Yeah, right? Right,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yes.
Yeah. But his crew, like, were not into this idea.
Well, fair.
Yeah. He later wrote in his memoirs about the poor command qualities of his senior officers, which he didn't put in his official report, but he wrote that, quote, their object, they said, was gain not honour. They were poor. Instead of encouraging the morale of the crew, they excited them to disobedience. They persuaded them that they had the right to judge whether a measure that was proposed to them was good or bad. So it kind of almost sounds like they're a pirate crew. Like,
Yeah.
they're making the crew agree to do on everything before they do it, which wouldn't happen on a naval ship.
It's
it
like
would be
a democracy.
But on a naval ship, it would be the
Yes, what captain says goes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so JPG's sulking because he's like, no one's doing what I'm telling them to do, and I just want to attack Whitehaven. It's so weird. So the argument he put to his crew was that the British were already fighting an unpopular war, and it was time for them to finally feel the cost at home. Like, you know,
Okay.
we have to make them suffer
Right.
and feel what it's like. Like, this war is already unpopular, and if we make them really feel it at home, like,
People will be
it's
like,
going to turn the tide, it's
Yeah.
going to end the war. But I really just feel like this is him going, they stole my ship. I'm like, sad.
I hate them.
Yeah, he does not come off well in history. I don't know what he was really like, but he's not remembered well. But, like, immediately his top lieutenants protested. So Ezra Green, the surgeon on board, argued, quote, nothing could be got by burning poor people's property.
Yeah. Anya, Ezra.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So none of this mattered anyway, because they had to abandon their plans because, like, bad winds pushed them back towards the coast of Ireland.
Great.
And they tried instead for, like, a late-night attack on a Royal Navy ship that they heard was anchored nearby, but that didn't work out because, like, in the dark they misjudged when to drop the anchor.
Oh, no.
And then they were, like, in the wrong spots, and they had to, like, cut anchor and run.
Oh, no.
He just does not sound very smart.
No.
But when they were running away from this Royal Navy ship, the wind shifted in their favour and pushed the Ranger back across the sea towards Whitehaven. So they were like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's attack Whitehaven.
Wow.
Yes.
With this Navy ship on their tail.
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily chasing them, but
Okay.
it was aware that they were around.
Wow.
It was just like, what are you doing? So John Paul Jones himself led the assault with 2 boats of 15 men.
Oh my god.
But that's out of the 150 people that were on board his ship. Like, he had 150 crew members and he could only convince 30 of them to come with him. Like, they were just super not into it.
The bloodthirstiest.
Yeah. I think just the most like, oh, fine, if we have to, shut up already. So this was just after midnight on April 23rd, 1778.
Wow.
So the plan was to set fire to and sink all of Whitehaven's ships that were anchored in the harbour.
Probably fishing boats and stuff.
Well, it was like an industrial town. So there were 200 to 400 wooden vessels that consisted of a full merchant fleet and many coal transporters.
Okay.
So it
Alright,
was strategically
so it was-
a pretty good choice.
Yeah, alright.
Yeah. But it still feels like it was probably personal because, I mean, this is... Britain at the time was just... The whole coast was just important ports that you could have made...
attacked.
Yeah, exactly. So they also hoped to terrorise the townspeople by lighting further fires.
No.
I know. So rude. So apparently it was a clear but cold and frosty night.
Ooh, I can see it.
Yes. The mist coming off.
Is the moon out?
Surely. So the 2 boats were put into water, filled with the 30 men, and they were armed with pistols and cutlasses. John Paul Jones took charge of 1 boat, and his Swedish second-in-command, which was one of the only people he trusted, Lieutenant Mayer, was in the other one.
Really sounds like a pirate raid, doesn't it?
Right?
Or like
It's so
Vikings
weird.
or something.
Yeah. And due to ill winds and an ebb tide, it took them 3 hours of rowing to reach the harbour.
No.
They tried to land once, but the shore was too rocky and the wind was too strong, so they had to keep rowing for another half an hour. And by this point, the sun was starting to rise.
No.
Just sounds like a shambles, the whole thing.
He's not super confident, is he?
No.
JPJ.
So the intention was for one of the boats' worth of men to burn the ships in the northern half of the harbour, while JPJ led a raid on the fort to spike the guns, because it was really important to get rid of the guns so that they could escape.
Yes.
But they had to take the guards out first, before they could get to the guns. So JPJ apparently led this mission himself and was successful. He left Lieutenant Mayer guarding his boat, which turned out to be wise, because according to Mayer, the rest of the crew planned to ditch Jones and nick his boat if he didn't succeed.
Wow.
Like, they were still, even though they were there on the raid, they were just not, they didn't believe in it, they weren't really into it.
Yeah.
I don't know why any of them went. I guess he was just very annoying, and it was easier to agree.
Yeah.
But he was successful. He managed to subdue all the guards and tie them up. He didn't kill anyone at that point, thankfully. Yeah. And apparently him standing on the battlements of the harbour and declaring victory roused the men's spirits, and they all decided to actually join the mission.
Okay.
So he took his midshipman, Joe Green, they spiked the guns, and they sent the rest of the men to burn the ships. So while the captain was disabling the guns, I think it was the other boat load of men landed at the Old Quay and headed straight to the pub and got drunk.
Oh, no!
So they basically went to the pub, broke in, scared the innkeeper and his family into staying in their quarters, and just raided the pub. Yeah.
Oh,
and got really
funny. Drunk. Priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently they went to the pub because their lanterns had run out of fuel and they wouldn't have been able to light the fires. But whatever their intentions were, they got very sidetracked. So, they just did not seem into this whole thing.
No.
So they did eventually leave the pub, but by this point, dawn was breaking, and, they were like, shit, we need to get this over with. So they concentrated their efforts on the coal ship Thompson in the hopes that would burst into flames and that would spread to all the adjacent vessels, because they were all grounded by low tide, so they were stuck in the mud.
I see.
So it was a smart time to burn them all, because they couldn't float away, they couldn't be, pushed out to sea or anything. Yeah, but somehow, amidst all the confusion, one of Jones's men, David Freeman, slipped away and started knocking on the doors on Marlborough Street to warn the town that fires had been started in the ships.
Wow, they are really not all together on this.
They do not like him. They do not support him. They're not into it. So funny. I mean, it was a really dangerous situation, and you do have to give him some credit for seeing the advantages of setting Whitehaven alight, because the ships were all full of coal, and they were next to coal stades, which kept, large reservoirs of coal in them. It was low water, so the entire fleet was packed really close together. Lots of warehouses were along them that were full of combustibles, rum and sugar and tobacco. But, I mean, there's also, you could also say that of pretty much any harbour, really. So I don't know how much of this is JPJ being smart, and just harbours are a good target generally. Yeah. But the town was really aware of these dangers, and they had 2 fire engines. So they were immediately deployed, and with valiant exertions by all classes of people working together, they were able to extinguish the flames.
Woo, fire engines!
Yes. They'd thrown matches down into a few other ships, but they hadn't taken hold. And I read a newspaper article from the time that said, "Thus were the malicious attempts of those daring incendiaries frustrated."
Incendiaries.
Yeah, so the townspeople put out the fires, were just like, what the fuck? Apparently, some of them recognised Jones from when he was living, sailing in and out of Whitehaven all the time.
Oh, dear.
So Jones and most of his crew, except David Freeman, who was being grilled by the town magistrate, and got out of there and sailed back to the Ranger.
Yeah.
Or rowed back to the Ranger, rather. And didn't get shot by cannons, since spiking the guns was the only successful part of this mission. And then after that, they all got back on the boat, sailed to Scotland, and tried to kidnap an earl.
Why?
But they're still just on this mission to, terrorise people. At this point, they're acting very piratey.
Yes.
Because they wanted to kidnap this earl, but he wasn't home. His pregnant wife was.
Oh, no.
I know, but she apparently just, dealt with it and was just like, what do you want? And got her butler to give them a sackful of coal that he'd topped off with a few pieces of family silver.
Nice.
To trick them. And they were like, oh, that'll do. We'll take that. So they did. But JPJ himself bought back that silver from an auction later on and returned it to the Earl after the war because he felt bad. He's a weird-sounding dude. I can't work it out.
This is very confusing.
It's very strange. But yeah, so they'd sailed off to Scotland to try and kidnap this Earl. It didn't work, and I think they eventually just sailed back to America. It was really hard to find out where they went after that, but that was the last time that they tried to do anything in Britain.
Okay.
Yeah. So the British newspapers called the Ranger and its crew an American privateer ship.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds correct.
But it wasn't because they didn't have letters of marque, like we talked about in the pilot episode. So technically not a privateer ship. It just sounds like a dickhead. Acting like a privateer when he wasn't.
Rogue.
Yeah. They were also reporting that the plot was hatched by the French and that he'd been escorted through the channel by this huge warship for the express purpose of coming to Whitehaven. But that wasn't true. It was just
stirring up shit against the French.
Exactly. And this whole plot just seems to have been JPJ's strange, mad idea.
Wow.
Yeah. But it had a huge impact in Britain in regards to morale and also defence allocation. So coastal defences and militias were all beefed up, and that may have helped prevent a French invasion later on in the century.
Whoa.
Yeah. So,
mad.
Yeah, because they realised how vulnerable they all were.
Yeah.
So the Lloyd's Post in Whitehaven wrote, quote, "A number of expresses have been dispatched to all the capital seaports in the kingdom where any depredations are likely to be made. All strangers in this town are, by an order of the magistrates, to be secured and examined. Similar notices have been forwarded through the country, and in short, every caution taken that the present alarming affair could suggest." So people reacted really strongly to it. They took it really seriously and they were like, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And strangers in sea towns were like stopped and interrogated. And
Gosh.
It's so interesting. But Tim McGrath, a Revolutionary War naval historian, said, quote, "The act itself didn't help win the war, but the reaction helped end the war." So I thought it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then in 1999, the then Harbour Master of Whitehaven, together with the Harbour Commissioner and an officer from the American Navy, signed a proclamation forgiving the 1778 raid by John Paul Jones and the American Navy, which I thought was cute.
That's sweet.
Yeah. As for John Paul Jones, he joined the Russian Navy eventually, retired to Paris, died of kidney disease aged 45.
45?
Yeah, it didn't last long.
No.
He was buried in France, and then in 1906 his grave was rediscovered and he was reinterred in this really elaborate crypt on the campus of the US Naval Academy, where he rests to this day.
God.
Yep, that was that one time that America invaded Britain.
What?
Yeah.
Ta-da!
Total harebrained scheme.
Madness.
Insane.
That's really, like, flipped my concept of history on its head a bit.
Wow.
Don't you think?
Yeah, actually, I guess I kind of do that for
I
me.
love learning random stuff like that.
I had no idea this ever happened.
No.
I studied the American Revolution at school.
Yeah, right.
I did, like, my final exams on it, and this never came up.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, like, it's not so much relevant from the American side of things, but...
I feel like it doesn't fit into a narrative, or the narrative of the American Revolution, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit...
It wasn't to do with honour, and it wasn't to do with... It was all to do with individual gain, which...
Yeah. Which is kind of...
Is the American Revolution, because it was all about capitalism, but they were all about
freedom,
representation and
really.
democracy as, like, a bigger thing.
I think it's really funny that democracy massively backfired there.
Against him, yes.
Yay, democracy. Oh, wait, this doesn't work in every single situation all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad his crew could see what a dumbass plan that was, though. Like, it just sounded ill thought out and foolish, and it just seems like it wouldn't necessarily have affected the British so much as just the people of Whitehaven.
Yes.
Yeah, so, that one was really fascinating. So hilarious and bizarre.
I love it.
Yeah.
So much.
Good old history.
Nice one, Claire.
Thanks. So if you want to hear more history tidbits, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube.
Yay.
Please rate, review, and subscribe so other history buffs can find us.
If you want to know what sources we used, please go to our SoundCloud page. The link is in the description.
Today's homework is to thank all the amazing female doctors you know for how hard they've had to fight to get to where we are today.
Yeah.